Good morning. Welcome to aliquo.ca. Today's course is actually not really a course. It's more of a peek inside of a course, a 1 hour session on creating content that we're doing as part of a series of courses that sort of illustrate what aliquo.ca day-long courses are all about, and how to make use of them best with respect to actually you know improving your digital workflow, your digital marketing footprint, let's say, as we go along. Well, first of all, I should introduce myself. My name is Jordan St. Jacques. I am the lead digital marketing instructor for aliquo.ca. And I've got a little bit of a weird resume. Back in the day, actually, I used to be a concert promoter. And while I was working in the States in 2004, I got lucky enough to be shown the site MySpace and fell in love with it quickly as a target marketer's dream, and was the first person in the world to take a MySpace profile over 1 million friends in late 2004, early 2005, and use it within the context of a digital sales funnel. And that was sort of my intro into tech. And then over the years, as I went along, I actually learned new digital marketing skills every year, from WordPress to SEO to, well, social media was the first one, of course, and then email marketing and mobile after Apple revolutionized the world with the iPhone in the middle of last decade. And in 2013, I left that business, returned home to Ottawa, learned how to finally code for real, PHP, MySQL, JavaScript, that kind of thing. And in 2016, ended up at Invest Ottawa, accepted into the Invest Ottawa incubator there for startups. Later on, I moved over to the Carleton Lead to Win incubator upstairs at Bayview Yards under the direction of Professor Tony Belletti. And I'm now a guest lecturer for Professor Belletti at the Carleton Technology and Innovation Management Program. I also own a digital marketing agency called Digiterra, and am the founder of a number of startups, including the Prom Date app, and also including the Crowdfluence.app product for influencer marketing. So that's me. I've been at this for a long time, and accordingly, that's why I'm qualified to actually give you this kind of instruction, both in the aliquo.ca day-long courses, and also with respect to little primers like this. We'll spend the hour together today. So we'll spend the hour together. The first part of the hour, I'm going to go over some theory, some explanations of what we teach in the day-long course, so you have an idea as to what kind of training aliquo can give you. And then in the second portion of the hour, what we will do is actually go over some convenient tools that I think you all should know about. And those tools really are the difference between, actually getting a great content creation flow going, as opposed to, wasting all your time, creating a couple of assets here and there. If you let yourself get bogged down by doing things inefficiently, then you're going to ruin your time spent, and whoever you're accountable to will obviously not be so pleased. So whether you're in government, or whether you're in business, or whether you're a freelancer, let's say, and you've got to economize every minute of your time, then the type of things that we're going to talk about here today is something that I think everybody can get benefit from. So notice as we go along, I don't mind if you ask questions. There's a question dialog box. Okay, there's a couple of things coming in. Jeff Radborn is saying hello. Well, hello, Jeff. And Sarah D is actually asking, will we be sharing this slide deck? Actually, it's not the slide deck that we will share, but an actual recording of the entire presentation. And you can ask Jody about that. In fact, you can ask Jody at the office about anything with the email address support@aliquo.ca. And they're great guys over there. Craig is the owner. Jody is the guy that pretty much runs everything. And as long as you email that address, it shouldn't be a problem in getting answers to your questions or getting action, on some sort of unresolved issue, let's say. All right, before we get started, one of the things that I've been Well, I mean, obviously it's March, and the world is upside down. COVID-19 has infected, well, all the northern hemisphere countries in the world and some southern hemisphere countries. And from a digital marketing point of view, it's a shame, obviously, because a lot of businesses have not gone under, but taken a back seat. For example, I have quite a bit of clients who are bigger mobile DJ companies, who are taking care of weddings and bar mitzvahs and corporate events. And clearly, in this day and age where everybody is being ordered not to actually go to large gatherings, things like that, the wedding DJ business, the mobile DJ business, was the first business to get wiped out. So I'm like everybody else. But sitting here at home, just sort of getting bored, just like everybody else, not shaving every day, things like that, I find myself looking for what the new normal is and reflecting on the role of digital marketing with respect to what we're going through right now, all across the planet, let's say. And I truly think that being having some skill in digital marketing is something that is going to be even more important going forward. Like, for example, if you look at some of the investments that are happening even just this week, just so you know, the tech startup business is usually funded by venture capitalists, VCs, as they say. And up until, I don't know, a few days ago, the VC scene this month has been pretty much just put on hold. And yet at the same time, now we're hearing out of China that an online learning company just scored $1 billion in Series B, and an e-commerce company also out of China scored a $1.1 billion investment going forward as well. And there have been a tremendous amount of companies that are actually going after the secure online voting space now too. So there is going to be a new normal, and for us to know how digital marketing fits into that new normal, I think is crucial in terms of identifying opportunities going forward. We are going to come out of this mess. That is undeniable. I mean, let's face it, even though COVID-19 is devastating across the world, it is part of the influenza strain, right? It's in the same family as H1N1. Excuse me, bad time to have a regular Canadian cough, eh? Anyway, it's part of the H1N1 strain. It's part, or not strain, but family, let's say. It's part of the SARS family and West Nile. So it is an influenza strain, and the rumors has it there's already cures out there, that have been discovered. And I think as a society, we will come out of this. As to when, I have no idea. And as to how well we will come out of this, I think that's important to, first of all, for us all to figure out what the new normal is, and second of all, to make sure that we know how to market whatever, to execute the marketing on whatever the new normal is. And so that means that courses like the kind that eloquo.ca teaches are going to be vitally important going forward as we figure out how to re-indoctrinate or rejig society, let's say, rejig the economy. Okay. So I'm not telling you that this all so that you can just put down your everything that you might be doing while watching this, but I think it's important to to make sure that you realize that digital marketing is going to be even more important going forward than it already has been. Okay, so that being said, welcome aboard, and let's go forward here this morning. Okay, so the Eloquo day-long course. All right, you have to remember that content marketing underlies everything. All right, and what that means when I say it underlines everything, remember that the big 5 pillars of digital marketing are web, search, social, blast, and mobile. Blast, of course, being primarily email marketing. Now, with respect to those 5 big pillars, any other form of digital marketing combines one or more of those elements to make whatever that digital marketing subset is. And content marketing is sort of, I mean, you could best be considered that that it's a strategy that has to examine every single one of the channels that you are using. So for example, if you're going to shoot some video footage, you need to make sure that that video footage can be used A, on YouTube, of course, B, on all kinds of different social media, and that involves different screen sizes. So for example, if you're going to do an Instagram story, excuse me, then your Instagram story video dimension has to be 1920 by 1080 in a vertical format, right? If you can't adjust your video accordingly, then you can't publish a story, right? Your YouTube is actually, well, depending on if you're doing, HD or 4K or just like a regular HD, let's say, then, usually you can get away with 1920 by 1080 structured wide. Your Facebook video is usually a wide video as well, and same thing with your Twitter video. So the aspect of taking that video content, you have to take that video content knowing that you're probably going to reuse the same footage in different areas, right? And that's very, very important. You have to be able to disseminate that video where people are living online, right? You can't expect that your Facebook users will just rush over to your Instagram accordingly, right? You have to assume that they're going to be sticky like that. If people are on Facebook, they're going to stay on Facebook. If they're going to be on Instagram, they're going to stay on Instagram. And the only exception to that, of course, is let's say you posted a YouTube link into a Facebook post. Well, then you can assume that some people are just going to watch the video on Facebook through YouTube, or some people are actually going to navigate right over to your YouTube channel, which is kind of what you're hoping for there, because then you can hopefully get people to subscribe to your YouTube channel and end up serving multiple purposes with the same content. Okay, now there are so many content formats when it comes time to the whole digital marketing spectrum. Okay, I've listed 4 here: websites, blogging, video marketing, and email marketing, but really that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are lots of others out there. I mean, there's infographics, there's tutorials, there's how-to videos, there's brochures, there's white papers, magazines and catalogs, e-newsletters, online presentations, social media posts, podcasts, off-site blogging, mobile apps, ebooks, case studies, annual reports, press releases. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And they're all important, right? They're all important in and of their own right, right? And there's an underlying reason also why all these are important as well. And that's because Google pretty much indexes everything these days. Back in the last decade, Google was only indexing websites, right? And that's natural when you actually, like, if you actually read the original Google thesis, published by Sergey and Larry back in 1998, it was all about the website. Now there was some offsite stuff as well. I mean, obviously they had the big 3 of backlinks, blogging, and directory placements, but it was mainly just about reading the web pages and scouring the code with the Google bots in terms of determining where your site ranked on something. But now you can actually see that Google is indexing pretty much anything that their Google bots can crawl and read. So for example, social media posts, right? Everything gets indexed on the major networks, right? Even Pinterest at this point. You ever notice when you search for somebody's name, one of the first things that comes up is either their Facebook link or their LinkedIn link, or perhaps even an Instagram link, right? Because all of those different profiles are getting indexed. And so therefore, whatever you put out as a content on social media is not only going to serve from a content marketing point of view in terms of drawing people to your website and putting them through your sales funnel, but it's also good from an SEO point of view. And that's very easily understood. Even infographics, which most people actually think is a graphic design oriented kind of tool, if you code your infographic in CSS, and go the other route besides actually doing it from a graphic design point of view, Google can actually read that CSS code, and presto, your infographic is actually indexed on Google in and of itself. Medium.com. Why would I advocate blogging on Medium.com when you can theoretically just blog on your own website? Well, blogging on a high value site like medium.com actually carries a special weight within Google. And even more of a special weight within Google is given to the websites of major newspapers, let's say. So for example, you get yourself a press release out there, and if it makes its way onto a website of a major newspaper, well, then your SEO score is going to shoot out the roof because of the fact that, like, say, for example, well, the major paper here is the Ottawa Citizen. So if I was able to get the Ottawa Citizen to publish something all about my company, my SEO is going to go at the roof because of the status that the Ottawa Citizen has within Google. And that status can be actually, sort of exemplified when you consider how often Google will actually crawl websites. So as a small business, my agency, I'm lucky if I get crawled once every 8 weeks, right? It's usually once about every 8 to 10 weeks for a company of my size. Whereas the Ottawa Citizen website, which is the major newspaper here in town, probably gets crawled 3 or 4 times a day, right? Nobody ever knows for sure, but we do know that because of Google News and the relevance that they give to that and the priority they give to that, that Google is crawling the websites of major newspapers multiple times per day. And anyway, all those different content forms that I mentioned before is, they're all, you can make a case both for in and of themselves, and also too with respect to the SEO aspect. Okay, I think the only one that you can't really do is podcast, because Google can't scour through like an audio file or a video file. So podcast is something that probably doesn't enter into the SEO very well. Now videos, they're in the same boat as an audio file like a podcast. However, YouTube is the #2 search engine in the world. So let's say you come up with a how-to video or explainer video or even just a promotional video to use in your content marketing, and of course you want to put it on YouTube. Well, it's not the video itself that gives you SEO score, but when you're uploading it to YouTube, you have to define a title, you have to define a description, you have to define tags, and all those 3 things actually enter quite prominently into SEO as well. So please, as you formulate a strategy for your content marketing, remember that it's not necessarily just about customer acquisition, to the top of the funnel. It's also for SEO purposes as well. So it's an important distinction to remember that anything you do these days on digital marketing is usually serving multiple purposes. And if you stop recognizing that, and if you stop being concerned with the fact that the content marketing actually kills more than one bird with the same stone, then you're going to miss out on opportunities. And I certainly don't want that to happen to any of you guys. So let's keep going on. Okay. Now, what we have here is, hold on. All right, content categories. That's an important thing. The 4 content categories that I actually deal with on a regular basis whenever I'm starting up a brand or maintaining a brand, whether it's my own brand or a client brand, are informative, educational, promotional, and of course, humor. All right. Now, informative is, simply put, is telling people about your product. What is your product? What is your industry? The highlights of your product, things like that, right? Educational is how your product solves a problem within the particular industry. And later on, we'll see an example of a company called Buffer.com that has probably the best blogging campaign that I have ever seen with respect to a content marketing kind of campaign. All right. Promotional is pretty basic to understand. Buy one, get one free, those kinds of messages. All right. And then the last, but certainly not least, is humor. Now, humor is tricky. All right. It can really, really make or break your content marketing efforts. All right. Now, what you have to do with the humor, first of all, you got to make sure you don't piss anybody off, right? There's always, in any large grouping of people, there's always someone that's going to take offense if you are a little bit too edgy, let's say, or you come close to the line, if you will. And you don't necessarily want to do that, right? You're not doing this content marketing, especially the humor aspect. You're not doing that humor to necessarily upset anybody, right? An upset user, or an upset viewer is a lost customer, right? Because you're actually going to turn them off from your brand, all right? And so what you're trying to do is be as non-controversial as possible, and yet at the same time pointing out some humorous fact about your industry that that your product actually solves, right? You're not doing this just to tell knock-knock jokes. You're actually doing this to try and point out a deficiency in the industry that your product solves in a very humorous manner. And that is much more easier said than done. So you have to be a little bit careful with that stuff, okay? And having said that, if you can actually nail humor and get, like, for example, a lot of people use memes, and I'm no exception. I use memes all the time. But if you can really, really nail that kind of thing, then you're gonna like the benefits of a great humor post, let's say, are 10 times more than, for example, any one of these regular posts like informative, educational, or promotional. Now, having said that, you have to have all four and you have to mix it up, okay? If you don't, then you're going to get stale and people will not keep following you. You have to remember the golden rule. If you take away nothing else today, take away this: people follow content, all right? And like I said, I've been at this for a long, long time. So I've seen this happen empirically over and over again. What happens is, let's say someone is drawn to the attention of your Instagram profile. What they're going to do is they're going to very quickly, subconsciously check out a few things. They'll check out your profile image. They'll check out your profile name. They'll check out your profile bio. Certainly, last but not least, what they will do is check out your posts, the posts that are on your profile. And if those posts are entertaining or otherwise somewhat productive to that person's day, they will follow you. But remember this: they are not following you because your product is all wonderful, okay? They're following you because your product or your content does something for them, okay? People don't care about what you are doing. They only care about what kind of a difference that your product can make in their lives. So if you actually adjust your content to speak to the problem that your product or service solves, and then show why your product is what they should be using to solve their problem, well, then you're going to make money. You're going to do well. But you have to just, and I know I've already said this, but it's just worth saying over and over again. You have to get rid of any arrogance or any hubris that you might have and simply focus completely on your customer. So in other words, don't be like Donald Trump, because he does that a lot. He actually mistakes everything and thinks that it's all about him, where in this case you have to get rid of that and you just have to focus on your customer, okay? So the lead funnel, all right, this is worth pointing out as well. There's 5 stages. I mean, other people define it in different ways. They theoretically can, but for me, I just use the basic lead funnel definition, and that's starting out with awareness, where someone learns about your product, right? Moves over to consideration, where someone tries to decide whether your product is the solution to solve whatever problem that that customer, that potential customer, might actually be having. Conversion is when they decide to actually buy your product. And this is where the real fun begins, because once they've bought your product, they're theoretically eligible to be a loyalty stage user or a loyalty stage client, where they buy your product over and over again. And then last but certainly not least, it's advocacy, where they love your product so much that they're actually word of mouth spreading the news to their friends. And that's really where you want to be most of all. Now, that doesn't always happen, of course. Not like if you've got 1,000 people that go into the top of the funnel for awareness, by the time you get down to advocacy, you might have 100 or less. And that's just life. Obviously, not everybody who becomes aware of your product is going to end up being a customer, and certainly everybody that becomes a customer is not necessarily going to, you're not going to have 100% of your customers going up on the rooftops and actually, screaming at the top of their lungs that they should buy your product or service. Excuse me. So, um, and anyway, this will come in handy a little bit later. Okay. Now, I want to tell you about. Um, Actually, I'm going to get rid of these two and tell you about two case studies that are actually really, really relevant to whole content marketing. Okay. And the number one case study that I always like to talk about when I talk about content marketing is buffer.com. Okay. Now I'm going to assume that most of you know what Hootsuite is. Hootsuite's been around for a long, long time, over a decade for sure. Good Vancouver Canadian company. Ryan Holmes is the guy that started that whole thing out there. And but the thing with Hootsuite is, for whatever reason, they just have not really changed up their design over the last decade. And so at this point, it looks, pedantic, outdated, and it's really boring. So Buffer comes along about 6-7 years ago, and obviously puts forth a much cleaner design than Hootsuite had. But they were still, vastly smaller than what Hootsuite has. Hootsuite was the king. I mean, they're still the king, but Buffer's a strong number 2 now. Anyways, what Buffer did with their blog program was they actually put out a series of blogs, and it's been around for a long time now, and it's a resource within digital marketers. Their blog series doesn't talk about Buffer that much. What it does is it teaches people how to be great digital marketers. So they're not talking about, about their product as per se. I mean, there's a few articles in there that talk about product functionality and things like that. But what they're doing is they're talking about what can be achieved by using Buffer, right? So they're actually using their blog category as a resource, right? You want to be a digital marketer, you can be a better digital marketer by using Buffer. And the association is that with all these digital marketers all over the world coming to the buffer.com website to actually learn how to be digital marketers, well, they get a whole bunch of people signing up for the trial version of Buffer at the same time. And then those people, once they're signed up for the trial, they enter the lead funnel, right? Awareness, consideration, conversion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so as a result of that, Buffer has become a strong number 2 over the years, to the point where they're nipping at Hootsuite's heels. Great job for them. All right, Clipfolio, almost the same sort of example, except what Clipfolio did is a lot of video content marketing. And guy there who used to be the CMO before all the world turned upside down, a guy named John Milne, who I really respect, actually implemented a stronger content marketing program and ended up in a situation where Clipfolio revenues were on the upswing. And it was the same thing. What Clipfolio does is they make a dashboard for metrics for any company whatsoever. You can just subscribe to their self-serve product and create your own dashboard, and then that dashboard can be pushed to a big display within your office, so that basically any employee in the office can just walk by the monitor and see the latest metrics and inspire people to work harder throughout the course of the day. And Clipfolio did a fantastic job of adding video content marketing into that thing. What they were doing with their content was teaching people how to achieve better metrics, better KPIs, key performance indicators. And as a result, their association with that meant that when people were trying to find a dashboard accordingly to display their KPIs and their metrics, Clipfolio was right there with that association because of the content marketing that they were actually doing, right? You'll see a lot of that in various aspects of digital marketing, right? That kind of, benefit by association. Airbnb is a master at that. What they do is they send out emails that concentrate on the destination. So they'll, send out an email saying, hey, you thinking of going to Boston for the weekend? Well, this is what you can do in Boston. You can visit this place. You can go to the old Cheers pub. You can go there, go visit, take in a Red Sox game, blah, 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 right? And what they're doing is they're associating Airbnb as the tool to actually use to stay in Boston while you're going to Boston to do all these wonderful things. And so as a result of that, they get a lot of business that way. They're focusing on the problem and not necessarily the product, right? What is the problem and how can our product be used to satisfy that problem? So you'll see a lot of that in the best companies, okay? All right, moving on. We have, okay, so now I'm going to shift into the last 25 minutes here. And by the way, you can ask questions as we go along, or you can ask questions when we get to the end, okay? So that's always going to be available to you, all right? Okay, so some of the tools, okay, so the big dog set of tools is, of course, the Adobe Creative Suite, all right? When you're creating your content, Adobe has something for everybody, all right? The big four, of course, are Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, After Effects. Then there's also Audition, which is for audio. And then there's Adobe XD, which is for screenshots, okay? Anyway, Photoshop and Illustrator are for graphic design. Premiere Pro and After Effects are for video design as well, so that's worth knowing. Any serious graphic designer is going to have comprehensive knowledge of the Adobe Creative Suite. If you don't, and you want to actually upgrade your skills accordingly, like become a Photoshop expert or an Illustrator expert, Eloquo has day-long courses in various aspects of the Adobe Creative Suite. So please remember that. It's not just the digital marketing courses that Eloquo offers. They've been an Adobe certified trainer for a long time, 15, 16 years. And as a result of that, so anyway, all I'm saying is if you, it's not just the digital marketing courses, you can also take these graphic design courses and video design courses at Eloquo as well. They have a full comprehensive menu of courses that you can take, including courses on actually how to code, like PHP and JavaScript and WordPress as well, I think, and you can go from there. Now, you probably don't know what XD is, the last item on this list here, so I'm going to actually show you, okay? XD is the Adobe Creative Suite entry that allows you to design screenshots for apps. So if you're like me, you go to parties, whatever, social events, meetups, and once people find out that you can actually code or you're in the tech industry, you're always going to get people coming up to you saying, hey, I got a great idea for an app. Well, I can't tell you at this point how veterans in the tech industry just start rolling our eyes when we hear that, right? Because a verbal concept is really nothing. Nobody can understand it. Nobody can get it, like feel it, touch it, feel the vibe of what the product is supposed to be. Where now with Adobe XD, what you can do is you can actually design a fully navigational, not functional, but fully navigational app, which is what Celeste did, my graphic design student last summer. So we can click through this. I'm going to click through here. I'm going to click again and log in, and you can see what prom date is actually all about. So with respect to Adobe XD, the reason why that actually works out well for content marketing is because if you have a website for an app, or if you're doing a blog entry for an app that's forthcoming, you can actually do up the screenshots within Adobe XD first, take the screenshot out, and use it within the context of whatever your blog article is going to be, or or whatever other piece of content marketing that you happen to be working on. Anyway, this app here, just in case you're curious, is an app for prom-going teenagers to link to each other as couples. Now, this is all dummy data, of course. This is Julie and Brian repeatedly. But you can see here what happens if I click on the first row. Well, Julie and Brian have linked themselves as a couple to go to prom dates. I can also click on the singles tab and see who's still single. So, for example, if you're like my friend Bill, who asked Tracy to the prom when I was back in high school many moons ago, and Tracy said no because she had been asked by somebody else the night before, well, prom date will prevent you from actually making that horrifying mistake. Also, too, in the menu here, you can see there's a dress registry. Also important. I mean, if you can ever imagine two girls showing up at the same prom with the same dress, that's a serious faux pas. Level planner. deals. I'll click on deals. You can see here that there's a deals function that will allow people or businesses to actually publish deals, and so on and so forth. So we have the prom date app coming out. Well, we were going to launch it in April, but Corona being Corona, we decided to hold off a bit. But you can see here, I needed to prepare a website. And the app doesn't exist yet. The code isn't done. The coders are still working on it. They have about a month left to go. But to produce a website, I needed the screenshots. So lo and behold, I use Adobe XD, and there are my screenshots. Oh, there's my nice little prom date app content marketing video. You see the screenshots that I'm using in here? If I didn't have the power of Adobe XD, it would not have been able to include those kinds of screenshots. So you can see that even though it's a little bit off the beaten path, Adobe XD still necessary when you're preparing certain kinds of content. Okay. All right. So that's Adobe, and it's the big dog. But there are a ton of times when it's not to your advantage to open up the big Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro. Those are big programs, right? And when you launch them, they do take quite a bit of resources away from your computer. Sometimes you just want to do something very quick, and to open Adobe, anything Adobe for a very quick task sometimes doesn't work. So, excuse me. Let's go over a few tools. These are some tools that I use day to day. Let's show you what they are, and hopefully you like what I'm showing you here. Now this one here is called Catwing, and it's by far one of my, I think it's by far my absolute favorite of the non-Adobe tools. And you can see why when you go to tools here, after you go to catwing.com, you can see what they've done is they've splintered off the actual functions into smaller web portal functions. Like for example, here's a module to just add subtitles. Here's a module just to make memes. Here's a module just to add audio background to a video, right? And the list goes on and on. There's resizing video. I mean, of course, resizing video is something that Adobe Premiere Pro offers, but it's just one of, many, many dozens of features. Whereas here, all you have to do is go here, upload your video, ask for it to be resized, whatever. So you can take a regular video, click on Instagram, and it'll turn that video into a square. It'll chop the sides, right? Or format it into Instagram story or a Facebook video or a Twitter video. And it'll adjust that video automatically to those resolution sizes so that you can use it on that social network in an optimal manner. Here's a module just for removing the background from an image. How many times have we ever wanted to do that? Get ourselves, the primary object on its own so that we can actually just, have a transparent background and overlay it on top of something, right? Well, of course, Photoshop does that, but it's cumbersome to open it just for that task. So Catwing has a nice module for that. Anyway, there are tons of modules here. I'll leave you to inspect them all to yourself because otherwise we'll be here for, longer than an hour for sure. And but I highly, highly recommend Catwing.com. I know Julia, the owner. She's a hardworking woman and startup founder, and definitely Catwing is worth it for those simple tasks where you just don't feel like actually opening up Photoshop or Illustrator or any of the others. Okay. Now, this next tool is called Photopea, and as you can see, it looks pretty much like an online version of Photoshop, which is exactly what it is. It's not owned by Adobe, of course. Now, Photopea is not the only online photo editor that there is out there. There are others. Photopea is just the one I like to use, okay? So feel free to, go into Google and search for the term online photo editor, and you'll see a lot of them come up, okay? I can say to you guys now that I've used this for almost a couple of years now, and it's pretty good, right? If I'm just looking to do something very small, like chop off some edges off an image so that I can use it properly or resize it or whatever, I don't even bother opening up Photoshop. What I do is I open up Photopea and it serves my needs pretty well. All right. Canva.com. Now, I don't use Canva because I like to do things from scratch, but for a lot of people, they need to start with a template wizard and they don't want to necessarily deal with the complexity of a Photoshop for themselves, for something like this. So Canva is a series of templates where you can make flyers, resumes, brochures, invitations, business cards, presentations, etc., etc., etc. And I have friends that swear by Canva. So I'm gonna, because I trust them, I'm gonna pass it on to you. That Canva, I mean, if you're functionally challenged when it comes to the big Photoshops and Illustrators and things like that, then a service like Canva can actually work really, really well for you. Looka.com is actually a platform that allows you to design logos in a real-time format. And sometimes that actually works out well. Like, I mean, if you hired a proper agency to do your digital or your brand design footprint, they might charge you a grand total of $2,000, for example, for a medium-sized business, and they'll give you logo and stationery and things like that. That's a little expensive. And here's the other thing. I mean, like I said before, I think we're all going to come out of this, but in what shape we're going to come out of it is yet to be seen. I mean, if this thing ends in a couple of weeks, then really it's just a blip in the curve and we can all get back to normal. But if this thing lasts into June or July, I got to tell you, I think a lot of companies and a lot of people, the cash reserves are going to be depleted. And so do you really want to necessarily hire somebody at market rates to design your logo from scratch? Well, you can use Looka, and it'll take you through its own wizard, and you can end up just designing your own logo. And I think at the end, once you've designed your logo, you can do it for free. But then to export the files, of course, they're going to ding you for like 50 or 60 bucks or something like that. Still, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than actually hiring somebody to design it from scratch. Okay, so Looka is a tool for logo design that I use all the time. Now, these next two tools are actually pretty cool, okay? Buffer.com is a tool where you can actually design photos, images to use on social media. You can take one of their templates or you can upload your own images. You can see down here at the bottom left. You can change the size. Here, there's your stories format, your vertical format. Here's your square format for Instagram. Here's your wide format for Facebook and Twitter. You can have a filter, you can adjust text boxes, you can even upload a logo or a graphic accordingly and place it wherever you want, like a watermark or even a logo title or something like that. And then just share and download. And you've got yourself your next image for your next great social media post. Pablo is offered by Buffer. Again, but the blog, Buffer doesn't just do their blog program. What they also have is a series of tools that they offer for free as well, so that they can be associated with the movements of digital marketers everywhere, okay? So Pablo was the first major tool they came out with a few years back. Something that they came back out with about, I guess, almost a couple of years ago is their Stories Creator. And whereas the last tool allowed you to go from story format to square format to wide format, this one here is just for stories. You can upload an image. Actually, here you can do template, right? There's my food. I can even adjust the text. So let's say I want to do more than 5, there's 8. And presto, I've got myself an Instagram story post, right? I don't necessarily have to do templates. I can upload my own image, or I can simply do a background color, right? Upload a graphic, do my title, body, or caption text, or a combination of all 3 or parts of the 3. Download my image, and I've got an Instagram story image ready to go. By the way, I use both of these buffer tools all the time, okay? Now, this next tool, I just want to point it out very quickly. It's not really anything to do with content marketing, but it is a social media audit tool. It's called audit.digitera.agency. And what you can do is actually choose any one of the socials here. So let's choose Instagram, and we'll choose my Digitera, which is the username of my Instagram profile. And you can see it's just pulled a whole bunch of metrics out of my Instagram profile. And there you go. And this is way more metrics than Instagram itself even offers, okay? This tool is free. I never charge for it. You're welcome to use it as long as you want. And away you go. Now, I talked about Hootsuite and I talked about Buffer earlier. They're not the only ones anymore, okay? There's Social Meiko, there's Social HP, and there's Amplifier. And I won't bother pulling either of those, any of those three up. They're in the same space. They're called social media schedulers or social media planners, if you will, okay? And there's actually quite a lot of them out there. Most are crap. Some are pretty good. The three that I just mentioned are actually pretty good. And of course, Hootsuite and Buffer, even though I'm a little biased against them, are also actually pretty good. Now, this one last tool that I'm going to point out here for your pleasure is called Right Tag. And what that does is it actually allows you to find the hashtags that are actually working, okay? Using hashtag sentiment analysis and of course, you know, regular metrics, search volumes, things like that. And I think it's important that you realize that, you know, even though choosing the right hashtag is not necessarily content marketing, you do want to bring attention to your marketing or to your post, let's say. And hashtags on social is one of the biggest ways to do that. So get into using Right Tag in terms of finding out which hashtags actually work, okay? Now, this last slide here, as we get close to the end of the hour, a lot of times people will be looking for the right image, all right? Now, if you're in the middle of a post and you don't have your image, you don't necessarily want to actually have to hop in the car with the camera and go somewhere in town to go and take that right image. What you want to do is you just want to grab something quick off the web, okay? The first place that most people go is Google Images. And that's natural. I mean, we all use it. We all see it every day. The problem with Google Images, though, is some of the images on there are subject to copyright. So if you use an image off of Google Images, just because you can, right, and then the copyright owner sees it later on, you can actually be held legally liable and sued. And really, who wants that these days? You know, we've had to spend all our money surviving COVID-19. Do we want to necessarily end up in a lawsuit right after that's over? No, we don't. So there are a series of sites out there. I'll pull each of them up, the ones that I use anyway, that that actually give you royalty-free stock photos for free. So I'll show you these. There's Pixabay, there's Pexels, and there's Unsplash. And the three of those actually, well, they're pretty much the best. I use them. I use all three all the time. Although there is some duplication with certain images between one to the next, because you know an author will want to publish his image on as many of these sites as they can get. Anyway, you can use these images for free, and all you have to do is give credits to the author. So it's pretty much a great deal. And you know, there's a ton of stock on here. So let's say, I mean, I showed you my my prom app before. Let's do a search on here for prom. Well, there we go. All kinds of images. Dresses, corsages, limos, accessories. Here's a nice one. I could use that image right now. And all I've got to see here, free download, you see? Same thing with Pexels, same thing with Unsplash. In fact, these three and others like it have actually moved also into royalty-free stock video as well, like video clips and things like that. So therefore, these kinds of royalty-free sites are very, very important to be using all the time. Now, my last gem of the day, and this is a gem for you, okay? is something called AppSumo. And it's kind of like the Groupon of tech deals, okay? So essentially, you know how you can sign up? I mean, even Hootsuite on their entry-level package is about $10 a month. And I'm sure that you've all seen a lot of tools out there that charge on a monthly subscription, okay? Those monthlies, when you add them all up together, are a real killer, all right? I mean, I've seen some startups end up with $400 or $500 a month on monthlies, and of course, you know, especially at the beginning or when you're a smaller business like that, spending that kind of money is not efficient at all. So what AppSumo does is they'll do fixed, like they'll do deals with, you know, some of these tool companies, these tech tool companies, and say, I want to give our customers an opportunity to buy your tool at a one-time fee for a lifetime license, right? And I can't tell you how much money I've saved with AppSumo for all kinds of different tools out there. Anyway, what I'll say to you as we get close to the end of the hour is this little email inbox here. It is worth it for you to put your email in there and say, send me deals. You'll get deals, you know, at the beginning of the week. There's usually one a week, sometimes twice. But they're always one-time only, lifetime license fees. And you know, to pay one time for a tool, like it's usually around 49 bucks on average. It is so cheap, and you will save so much money if you can find a tool on there that actually speaks to your workflow, let's say. Okay. All right, that is my formal talk for the day. We have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Please feel free to use that questions tab and ask me anything you want, either whether it's on the content that I've discussed or whether it's, yes, Sarah D, Catwing is free. Or it could be digital marketing in general, or it could be something about Eloquo. But right now I'm open for your questions. So please, by all means, lay them on me. Hootsuite. Should I explore another option? Okay. The one I'm using these days is called socialmeiko.com. Now, Social Meiko actually has more integrations than Hootsuite does, more of the important integrations. And the one that I like most of all, which is why I actually bought this lifetime license off of AppSumo for Social Meiko, is that it's got an integration for Google My Business. Right now, Google My Business is an important weight within the SEO calculation. And it's also where Google Maps pulls all its data from and everything like that. So if you want to be, you know, a real player, then I would suggest that you actually integrate with Google My Business. And Social Meiko actually is a pretty good one. Okay, so Jeff, you've been using Hootsuite for many years. Okay, you're saying cool, great. Are there any other questions? Going once. Going twice. Have I ever worked in Sprout? A little bit. I actually helped out the Liberals win office. Hopefully there's no conservatives here. Cough, cough. In 2015 when Trudeau won the election, and the Liberal HQ used Sprout all the time. Sprout is really the domain of larger businesses, right? There's a pretty expensive price on there, especially when you get into multiple users and things like that. So Digiterra is only 12 people, and so therefore we don't really need the efficiency of a Sprout. But I have worked with it before, and it's actually quite good, but it's a little bit more of an enterprise tool, if you know what I mean. Okay, Sarah, content editor. What do you mean by that? Please explain. Jeff Radborn, do I know Dave Summer? Who's Dave Summer? How would I know him? Jog my memory. What does he do? Oh, it's Salem. Salam, content editor. Can you expand on that, please? I don't know what you're asking me. Oh, Jeff. No, I didn't know that guy. I may have heard of him. Think I remember his name sounds familiar, but I actually helped out more with the MPs as opposed to Liberal HQ. Oh, if you are not that much of a writer, do you have a content editor to help you? Well, we are writers, and we actually do write content for other companies. Um, Content is not really something you can fake, which is why blogging is pretty much the the holy grail of digital marketing. I mean, it's been proven, especially with the way that Google is set up and everything like that. Like placing an emphasis on relevant, fresh content. You have to have good content going through your blog, whether you write it yourself or whether somebody else writes it for you. It's just something you have to arrange. Okay, so we're out of question. Oh, you're welcome, Salam. We're out of questions, and we're almost out of time. Last call. Jeffrey, you're more than welcome. And if you decide that you need more training on digital marketing or graphic design or anything in the Adobe Creative Suite, definitely call, email the guys at Eloquo, support@eloquo.ca. Jody or Craig will be standing by. All right, that's it for us. Thank you for being with me this hour. I hope you learned a few things, maybe a couple of tool tips there. And just remember, when you decide that it's time to upgrade your skills, eloquo.ca is where you need to be. Thank you very much.